harmony to the new way, and so you don't have to switch to Classic to do what you used to do. So a little bit about me. This is my family. So we're in Houston, Texas. That's my wife, Rachel, my son, Hudson. And so we enjoy, let's see, I guess I kind of cover over it a little bit. But anyway, we live in Houston, and I work for Stone Ridge Software as of last week as a senior consultant. So I worked for an end user as of 2 weeks ago, and have talked with Malcolm a good bit about his transition in that. So if any end users are ever interested in jumping to consulting, it's been good. I know Malcolm's enjoyed it, and I'm enjoying it as well. So opportunity to help even more people than the company that you're working at is a lot of fun. So I love everything Dynamics and Power Platform, and my background is, I think everybody has untraditional backgrounds, their avenue into this space, but mine is mechanical engineering and operations. And so a little bit unique background in that. And then I also help lead the Houston user group. It's dormant right now. We'll have to revive that soon, but you can find me on social media, Chad Althouse. I'm pretty easy to find. There's another Chad Althouse in Minnesota, but other than that, it's pretty easy to find me. You can also find me at my website. Not crazy active there, but aspirations for the future. So. All right, so Power Platform, it's Microsoft's new low-code platform, right? But like, haven't we been doing low code this whole time? And yes, we have. So this Dynamics is a part of the Power Platform, but the Power Platform kind of, in some parts, came from Dynamics. Different product groups, and they ended up meeting, from how I understand. I'm sure people like Rich can shed more light onto how all of that worked, but I wasn't present through all of those different changes. But we've been doing low code this whole time, and now we just have more tools. And so we've got Power BI for business analytics. This is dashboarding and reporting, things like that. Power Apps, that's the application development itself. Power Automate, process automation. You can automate all sorts of things on your desktop or in the cloud. Power Virtual Agents, these are the chatbots, intelligent virtual agents. And then all of that is built upon data connectors, AI Builder, and Dataverse. And so those three components, we're going to dive deeper into all of these, but these three components are what empower the whole rest of everything above. And so to highlight, Dynamics 365 is a part of Power Apps. So the whole suite of customer engagement apps is under the umbrella of Power Apps. They're just Microsoft's first-party Power Apps and model-driven Power Apps built on the Dataverse. So that's just for reference how I see things. Is you'll see what I had before as a typical reference point for Microsoft, but I added this extra part in here because that's really how they're related. So to start, I want to talk about that backbone, that foundation for the whole platform. So data connectors really empower everything that we do. That's one of the biggest strengths of the Power Platform. You can access hundreds of different out-of-the-box connectors. It's increasing on almost a weekly basis. They're releasing new connectors all the time. And these are both first-party and independent. So Microsoft releases connectors, and they're always working on new connectors to other data sources, even non-Microsoft data sources, right? So they've got connectors to Salesforce, SAP, SQL Server, Excel. There's some independent connectors for things like WordPress and other, like anything you can imagine. And if it's not there, you can make your own. And so if you don't find what you're looking for, there are ways that you can actually build your own connector. If it has an API, you can make a connector for that. You can share it with the community, or you can monetize it if you want, even. So a lot of opportunities here, and these can be consumed in Power Apps and Power Automate Cloud Flows. So different ways that you can consume these connectors. I want to plug Connector Review by Reenhanced. So the group Reenhanced, Heidi Newhauser, does a lot of work with Power Automate connectors, and she is going through and documenting every connector and keeping up with all of the new releases and getting them in this repository. It's connectorreview.com, I think it is. And you can go, they've got tags for different things along the left side. I've got the tag for document generation. And so you can easily find, here's all of the different connectors for document generation. And then they've got different information for each of them with links to the documentation. So fantastic tool and very helpful that somebody is collecting everything in a way that's easier to find and search through than what Microsoft Docs has. But of course, Microsoft Docs is always the true source of truth, but this is very helpful. All right, AI Builder. So this is a way that you can process data through different artificially intelligent models. And these are both pre-trained and they're trainable, right? So some of them are out of the box. You don't have to do anything with them. Others you have to train to your specific use case. And in the next slide, I have some examples of what those look like. These can be consumed in Canvas apps. So you can use AI Builder components in Canvas apps themselves. You can use them in model-driven apps. Not everything, but some of these things you can use in these as components in these apps. Power Automate Cloud Flows, you can do just about everything with in Power Automate with the AI Builder connector. And this is actually what that looks like. So you've got up at the top, these are models that you have to train yourself. So let's look at the form processing. For the form processing, that's, for example, accounting, invoices. You want to automate the invoices and store the different pieces of information, all the line items and the totals. You want to store those in some database and extract them from the paper. And so you could do that. You feed in a set number of your example invoices, tell it what data points you want to take from that, and then it learns how to figure out which data you want, and you give it names, and then it'll now output. You feed it in a document, and it outputs the different data points that you had identified that you wanted. So it'll give you total equals this amount, customer name equals this name, and all of that kind of thing. So you tell it what you want, and it learns. The ones at the bottom, these are pre-configured out-of-the-box ones you can use. So like I said, invoices, you could train your own specific invoice, or Microsoft, based on standards in the most common formats, they've got an invoice processing model already available to use out of the box. Another one here, sentiment analysis. Maybe you want to run sentiment analysis on your customer satisfaction surveys or the emails you get. You could use AI Builder to do that, integrating with CE. There's a lot of other things you could for predictive. Where's predictive? Where's prediction? Forget. See it somewhere. Well, with the oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. Prediction is up here at the top right. You have to train it. And so you could also predict, if you have your sales forecasting you want to do. They've got some like forecasting in dynamic sales, but it's not AI like you could do here. So you could have your own models to predict when deals are going to close, that kind of thing. A quick win. I'm going to have some quick wins in here as we go through for some of these with ways that you can integrate Power Platform to your CE implementations. So the business card scanner control is a great one for model-driven apps. And on the left, I've got a screenshot where the AI Builder control is in the model-driven form designer. in the new Maker portal. And so you select AI Builder, Business Card Control. You bind the different model outputs to the table columns on that record, on that table. So you could put this on the lead form, or you could put this on the contact form, and then you can populate all of this data automatically. This is an example I did. I fed in this business card scan, and if you do it on your mobile app, you can actually take the photo, and then it extracted all of this information, got the first name, last name, main phone, mobile phone, email, and then it had some default values in there as well that were set. So quick photo, and then it fills in all the information. My previous company had the people going to trade shows, had them actually using this for when they get a business card from a prospective person that stops by their booth, they'll do a quick scan of this and record that lead in CRM so they can follow up after. And then they don't need the paper. All right, so Dataverse, previously referred to as Common Data Service, for a very brief time referred to as DataFlex. This is what we've all known in the CE space as the database that we're using. A very powerful database. It can now be used for more than just Dynamics, though. So the Dataverse now can be used for pure Power Platform solutions, and it is a very good data source. It's what you have to use if you're going to use model-driven apps, but we know and love this already. We've got robust data types. We've got logic and validation with business rules and all sorts of things like that. Robust security. There are things that are greater than what you can get with SQL. SQL's, a golden standard, but Dataverse has some other things that we can do with it. And one of those is data flows. This is kind of a lesser talked about feature in the Power Platform, but you can do Power Query, extract, transform, load jobs, functions on different data sets and bring them into the Dataverse. And so I've got an example of it here, a screenshot here. So these are all of the different categories, connectors. These aren't the same kind of connector, a little bit different here. The data flow concept came from Power BI, and now it's been ported into Power Platform itself, to the Dataverse. So this now makes the data accessible in your CE implementation. So if you look in here, all of these different things, the data flows will run regularly to sync all of the data from whichever data source you're saying into a Dataverse table. And so if you have maybe some reference information that's coming from a SharePoint site, and you want to be able to have lookups to that data in CE, then you can create a data flow, bring in that SharePoint list into a table in the Dataverse, and then create lookups to that table within Dynamics. So a lot of good opportunities here. Just another tool in your toolbox. You've already got virtual tables, which are quite powerful, but this is another way, and it will actually create the records in the system rather than just referencing them. All right, PowerFX. This is a really fun one, and there's a lot of updates that might come up and be talked about in the conversation after my presentation on the new release. This is a place that Microsoft's pouring a lot of effort into. So this basically came from Excel, the same kind of expression-based formulas, and it is what Microsoft's pushing into more than just Power Apps. So this came from Canvas apps, but now it's coming to model-driven apps. I think maybe from what I understand, this language is going to be applied to more of the Microsoft ecosystem as well. And so on this example, this GIF, this is a new PowerFX formula column. It is the new generation of the calculated column. So it's only available in Dataverse for Teams right now. So it's a little bit limited. We can't use it quite yet, but soon. But you can see how simple it is. you've got IntelliSense, and we want to create a calculated column, previously known as calculated field, and we're just doing simple math. And so you just click Add Column, you type in what you want, and then you select the formula. Yeah, and then IntelliSense price times quantity, and that's it. So it's going to be the replacement to what we had before, what we currently have for calculated columns. Another is command bar buttons. And with that, this is a very exciting thing. Hopefully some people have started playing around with these. With this, you can now, we've got a new native Microsoft provided interface for managing command bar, previously the ribbon. So ribbon workbench is what we've had to do thus far for any customizations, but now Microsoft is giving us our own interface natively to do this. And then you can give the formula that you want to do using the language that you'd use in a Canvas app. And so this one, we're patching a record directly to the Dataverse table. So you can do all sorts of things. Don't have full parity with Canvas app functionality in the different expressions you can use. But in here, we're creating a new task. We're setting the regarding to the current account, and that's it. So instead of having to use JavaScript or calling a workflow or something like that, you can just insert the actions directly to the button. All right, so Power BI. This is the next, no, we're getting into the actual Power Platform components now. So Power BI, data visualization, reporting, dashboarding. I'm sure you've all seen this before. I want to talk about its relevance to CE folks. And so we've got dashboards in Dynamics, right? They aren't the best. They're not the prettiest. They're not the easiest to use. I don't think anyone would argue with me on that. And so Power BI is a great alternative to the native dashboards. There is a Dataverse connector, and you can see here, if you search for go to the Power Platform section, there's Dataverse, Common Data Service Legacy. This is the old connector, but Dataverse here has some great, powerful capabilities. It has direct query, which applies the actual user security through the report while it's querying the data. So when your users look at the report, they only see the records they natively have access to in Dynamics. And then if you make a change to their user security, then the Power BI report immediately shows the new changes. I can't say immediate. I haven't tested immediate, but it truly respects that. Whereas in the past, we've had to recreate security in various ways to get around that so people don't see the data they aren't supposed to see. But it wasn't ever able to reference the native business unit security role security. So you can use Power BI to embed in dashboards. So instead of using native dashboards, you can use Power BI. You can also, and they show up in the same dropdown of dashboards, you can also embed Power BI into forms themselves. And I've got examples of that. They've got some out-of-the-box template Power BI apps. These are Power BI template apps, not Power Apps. The sales and service analytics reports that you can get just up and running with the native configuration Microsoft gives. And you can have those just stand alone on your Power BI desktop or publish those for other people to use. And here, this is an example of a system dashboard. So like I said, it shows up just as a normal dashboard. You configure it in the Power Platform or Maker portal and are able to just add it as a dashboard to your model-driven Power App. And now you've got that full Power BI ability and interface, very pretty and clean and very responsive as you move around and interactive. And you've got all of that within your CE app. Another thing is embedding it to a form. So here is a bunch of accounts, all the accounts that we have in the system on this map. This is an unfiltered report as a tab on a form. But to take it up a notch, let's add contextual filtering. here's all of the contacts for this account on a map. So I haven't seen too many people do this kind of thing. Embedding Power BI with contextual filtering of the record you're on can be so powerful. And so this is just one example of how you can do that. All right. Oh no. Didn't mean to do that. Give me 1 second. All right. Just checking chat. So all good. Let's see. I'll do a question break in a little bit. So Power Apps. We live in Power Apps at this point. We live in model-driven Power Apps traditionally from the CE side. So when Power Apps came out, they have this idea of model-driven and Canvas Power Apps, and model-driven Power Apps are a derivative of Dynamics. Canvas apps, these are the pixel-perfect apps. These are mobile-friendly, and you build every little piece of how it works and what you see. And then they have also got portals, another option for public-facing or internal-facing access to Dynamics data. And then, and they don't cost anything to create, which is fun, as opposed to the previous Dynamics portals. So, like I said, I wanted to give some examples, either quick ones of how you can do things or examples of things that I've seen with some of these different things. So, and how it applies to people from the CRM side. So this Vivek Vivishi has had a great session where he shared this Nearby Customers app. And I think any Salesforce that has mobility could benefit from this app, because you open this app and it pulls in all of the different customers that are nearby. So it shows you on a map where you are and where all of the other customers are, and even got some options to take action. You can go ahead and automatically book, navigate, or give them a call, or book a meeting with them, or anything like that. And you've got full control of what you want to do in that and what you want to give the salespeople access to do. You can also embed Canvas apps into your model-driven Power Apps. So in your Dynamics forms, this is an example of one that I built for my previous company. And in the specific, this is a custom business partner table, and I've got a form for price books. And this drop down for the price book search is actually coming from SQL. And so I've got a custom table that's storing a relationship between, it's essentially storing a reference to SQL data and reference or relating it to Dynamics data. And so this allows multiple different pieces of SQL data to have additional information. I'm storing a discount piece of information here as well, related to the custom record. So really neat way that you can have extended functionality within your form, kind of intermixed. And you don't have to do a full tab. You can do that as just a section. You can make them smaller Power Apps. So this is custom pages, currently still in preview, but you can have, instead of having embedded apps, this is the next version. It's more native, and they are built with the Fluent UI. They look very clean and much more native with how you can do things. And you can make these all sorts of different methods, but this is a full page, custom page, an example of that. And it navigates when you click one of the records. It's essentially a Canvas app, but it looks better and looks more integrated. You can also use them, render them as pop-ups and as side panes. I think there's some code needed to do some of that still, but great possibilities with that. The Power App Component Framework. This is a way that you can leverage some of the new Power App stuff with CE. So if you want to change the control, we've got certain controls that Microsoft provides out of the box for different fields, but some they don't provide. And in this one, here's an example with, it's basically an option set or a choice column, but with images too, right? So a really neat way that's just one example of a Power App component that you can download. These are community built and shared for the most part, or you can build them in-house. They're Fluent UI, Canvas and model-driven Power Apps. They're usable on column subgrids, views, and dashboard subgrids. You can do a lot. PCF Gallery is a great resource. Here's another Andrew Butenko, MVP, great developer, built this one for address validation. It references Google, so it looks up an address as you type and goes and searches Google Maps and does an autofill and then fills in all of the different fields that you want from that address. So I think that's just a no-brainer implementation there. All right, Power Automate. So hopefully a good number of you have tried using Power Automate so far. This is what Microsoft continues to tell us to use, although they say Microsoft Flow when you go to a traditional classic workflow. But regardless, the sentiment's the same. Microsoft wants you in Power Automate rather than the classic background workflows. Background workflows, they don't have real-time capability. So these have access to all the data connectors, so you can access anything. Power Automate allows you to reach out to anything that you want, or have a trigger from something else coming to the Dataverse to do an update. You can have on-demand flows. You can have automated flows. You can have scheduled flows. We couldn't do all of that with classic workflows. We'd have to revert to plugins and code and that kind of thing. Power Automate Desktop allows you to access desktop applications on a local computer. Really cool. And also other websites. So you can actually scrape websites or take action on some other website to do something when you have some activity that happens in CE. This is an example of Power Automate Desktop. Another not quite as talked about. It's got a little bit of a learning curve, but this is an example of the building screen for Power Automate Desktop. And so you can see all of the different steps it's doing in here. Get current date time. It's converting that to text. It's getting a folder on the desktop that we're currently on, right? Creating a folder for countries. It's then writing this text that we had input into this for the date time. And and anyway, it goes on. So you can do all sorts of things. This is the designer. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but they've got some Power Automate Desktop. They've RPA in a day sessions. I highly recommend those. And here is another example. Anybody that's used the marketing app in Dynamics for event management until last year, last 6 months, I think, we didn't have any calendar files that you could send to somebody who registers for an event. And I thought that kind of sucked. So we wanted our customers to have a calendar event they could download to their calendar, Outlook or whatever, and create that event as a placeholder, right? And just like when you registered for this Teams meeting, you got the calendar ICS file. You could go ahead and add that to your calendar, right? And so I did this manually with Power Automate. So I just figured out the text format to create an ICS file. I composed that, and I actually saved it to SharePoint and created a sharing link publicly accessible, and then saved that URL back to the event itself. And you can see down here, the calendar file URL is right here from the output of the flow. And then that's able to be picked up in marketing emails and sent to the customer as like a button. This is another example of a flow that I'd worked on at my previous company. We had to integrate sales orders from quotes in CRM to orders in our ERP. And we had a crazy, crazy big flow that ran to do all of the necessary steps. There's a lot of technical stuff beyond my capability in this one, but just an example of what's possible. And it can get a little crazy sometimes, but it works. And it's without needing code. All right, the last piece of the Power Platform is Power Virtual Agents. So with this one, you can create little chatbots. We've got chatbots. Whenever you go to a lot of different websites, you get a little pop-up at the bottom or something like that, and they try to talk to you and solve your problems without talking to a real person, right? So this is a screenshot of one that I built. Very, very simple, but it's like, how can I build my own bot? It asks me if I want to learn more about creating a chatbot, and then it sends me links to Microsoft documentation. Very rudimentary, but it gets the job done. Low code, they're intelligent. It's got a visual authoring canvas. You don't need data scientists. I had a previous manager used to show me how I could try to get me excited about creating chatbots, but it was using the Azure, I forget what it's called, Azure Bot Framework, is that right? And it was way above my head, above my pay grade. I did not understand how to do that. But Power Virtual Agents makes it easy for the common person. And you can also, it's got natural conversational AI to pick up what your intent is. And you can access other data using Power Automate, things like that, and return it back to the chatbot. So that's a way that you can have your chatbot going out and doing things for you on behalf of the customer. And so some examples you might want to use Power Virtual Agents in a CE implementation: self-service information retrieval. So, hey, I want to know the status of this quote, like what's going on with that. And you can go out, find the information in CE, and return that back to the customer. For omni-channel, you could use the transfer to an agent option. And so get them as far as you can with a chatbot, solve as many of their problems as you can. If you can't figure it out, then you transfer to an agent, and now somebody live can take over. You could use it for lead generation from the website. You could also use it to retrieve data for upper management that doesn't want to access the system. They can just, if you have it programmed right, then they could ask questions to the chatbot to get the information they want. You could also embed them in Dynamics. And Dion Taylor has an example that I have a screenshot of here, where she embedded a bot to her form on the opportunity. And it will go, and this is a very simple thing, but just an example of what's possible. It's going to tell you the owner of the account or of the contact. So again, pretty simple, but it can go and get other information and return it back to the user. This is that visual authoring canvas. It's very, very clean, easy to follow. You can see the different flow paths, and you'll have different options, and they all meet back in the middle, or they can terminate or do other actions, or even go to other topics in Power Virtual Agents. So how much does it cost, right? That's always what customers want to know, is what does this cost me? The great thing is that it doesn't cost anything to create any of these things now. So the previous Dynamics CRM world, it cost money to do anything we wanted to do, to create things. But now the cost is on the consumption side. So environments, you pay not for the environment, but for the storage it takes to have that environment and to host it. For portals, you don't pay to create a portal, you pay for the logins on that portal. For apps, you don't pay to create apps, you pay for the consumption of premium apps. And premium, Dataverse is a premium connector. If you have a Dynamics license, then you have access to premium connectors. People that don't have a Dynamics license and they only have a the basic Power App license you get with an enterprise Microsoft license, that gives you access to the basic connectors like SharePoint and the native Microsoft connectors and things like that. But if you have Dynamics, you have access to premium. At least a caveat, you have access to premium connectors when it touches dynamic stuff. So you can't technically, you can't have standalone premium things. You can't just be going to SQL and nothing else if it doesn't touch dynamics, technically. Like I said, you have access to a good amount of the Power Platform stuff with your Dynamics license. You have access to all of these things when it comes in the context of Dynamics. And I like the thought experiment of, do you actually need a CE license? People that make money, like partners from selling CE licenses, may not like that question. But there's a lot of customers that can probably get by with a model-driven, just a Power App license with a model-driven Power App. If you don't need the fancy functionality, there's a lot Microsoft brings to the table for those first-party apps that we pay for with the CE license. But if all they want is just managing basic customer data, then a Power App license is all they need, and you build a model-driven Power App with customers and activities. So just an interesting thought experiment. All right, I'm gonna take a break here. Are there any questions in the chat? Malcolm, anything?
There was a couple, Chad. I responded to some, and if anybody else has answers, feel free to chime in. I'll go through the most recent ones just to get your perspective and thoughts on them. One question was, can Power Automate be used instead of Scribe? Which I thought was a good question.
I will say, I believe it can. There are limitations with Power Automate, so in some scenarios it can't. I don't have full experience with Scribe to know the extent of its capabilities, but for kind of ETL processes, data integration, Power Automate can work specifically for loads that aren't too big, because there are limits in Power Automate on the throughput and the number of requests that you can send and number of actions that you can trigger in Power Automate. And so there are some limitations that you'd have to look at, and it's not as fast either as some of the classic integration options like Kingsway Soft or Scribe or SSIS or something like that. So technically, yes, for smaller things, it could be great. It's nice and simple. But for more complex things, you probably want to go to things that are made for it.
Good call. There was another one. I think you answered this. Dynamics portals no longer have a cost, or Power Apps portals rather, no longer have a cost. You touched on that, and I had responded as well with similar to what you had said. You pay by access, authenticated users or page views, that kind of stuff.
And I think if you have a legacy Dynamics portal, it might still be set up on the old billing, and you can change the billing to the new way. Don't quote me on that. Malcolm, I don't know if you have any thought on that.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have any thought on that. That's a good question, but you may still see the Dynamics portals nomenclature around there somewhere. I think that's it for questions. There was some commentary. There was actually one other question. It was, how do you do that with your camera? How do you present in that mode? I had said it's just it's a presenting option, but I don't know, maybe you can touch on that.
Yeah, it is. Can you see the little drop down up here?
No, we can't see that.
It's a Teams thing, so I can't. Here, let me.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, now we can see it. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's weird. When I went to screenshot it, then it made it render, so you can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, those little buttons up at the top allow you to overlay yourself on the screen you're sharing.
There was so thank you for that. I knew that there was a button in there somewhere, but I haven't seen it. There's a couple different options, right? You can do like newscaster, like you said.
Yeah.
A couple other things. So there was a question about or a statement rather, that Scribe has been sunset. And so Tibco, now we read that too just earlier this week, and there was some debate internally where I am about whether that was only for specific aspects of that. So Richard, I don't know if you can speak to that, if I can unmute you if you want, but there was a debate where I am that it was some features, but the Tibco cloud was still going to be operational and that kind of stuff. So I personally haven't done a whole lot of reading into that. I just saw the news feed in our org the other day say that, and I was like, oh, crazy, and then moved on. Many people are chiming in saying, go to look at Kingsway, which for the record is owned by a fellow Canadian. Just putting that out there, but it is a good solid option. Kingsway is a great tool.
And I see Rick dropped a link to Kingsway Soft in there, so yeah, that's a solid option. I think the The complex stuff, you'd want to go to that. And good to know about Scribe. I didn't know that. On Smart Connect. Hadn't heard of that one.
I've heard of Smart
Rod
Connect
works there.
before.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, I don't see any other. It sounds like you can see the chat too, so I don't see any other questions. Just some back and
Perfect.
forth, which is great to see.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna go kind of quickly through the Maker portal. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Talking about the new way to customize things. Try the new experience. If you're stubborn and continue to do things how you've always done them, Microsoft gives you annoying banners up at the top to tell you to do it the better way to customize the system. So if you've continued to ignore those notifications, then pay attention to what I'm about to share. So I'm talking about the Power App Maker portal, as we like to refer to it. And so this is where it's make.powerapps.com, and this is the new place to go and configure Power Apps. And one of the things, talking about solutions, oh yeah, there we go, make.powerapps. It's got all the new terminology, so you'll see tables instead of, for entities. Wow, I've gotten so used to the new terminology, I forgot what it was. Tables instead of entities, columns instead of fields, etc. You'll see all of that. The searchability is one of the neat components throughout the entire Maker portal. You'll see whenever you're trying to find something, there's always a search bar, and you can search all of the records in that to find what you're looking for. Whereas before, a lot of the views, we had to go and just scroll and scroll and scroll to find what we wanted. Environment variables are something neat with solutions now. You can actually create a set of information. There's some different data types that you can change the value from one environment to another. And that's something neat that you can do with the new solution manager. Solution checker is something that I encourage you to check out, especially if you have code. So if you have code in your implementation, this is a great thing. Microsoft actually runs through everything in that solution. It checks for plugins, it checks custom workflow activities, web resources, even SDK message setups, and it looks for things that don't follow best practices. It looks for deprecated functions. It'll give you a comprehensive report of things that you should consider changing. And so that's very helpful if you have some technical work in your implementation. All right, customizing forms. We've got a what you see is what you get. That's what that stands for. What you see is what you get preview of your form while you're building it. Super cool. These tabs are actually tabs. Once again, I know they were tabs and they weren't tabs and now they're tabs again. I'm excited for that. You get a searchable columns pane. If you're on a table with like 200 different columns, it can get tiresome scrolling. You can also preview different sizes of your form. So with the new unified interface, everything is, so the unified interface was kind of the transition to officially like model-driven Power Apps. Now they're the same thing as just a normal model-driven Power App. And they're fully responsive. And so things look a little bit different depending on the size of your screen. So you can change it and look, what does it look like with a mobile screen or a tablet, that kind of thing. There's also a high density header with a flyout. So you've got the header. We've always had a header, but now they take up less space. They're high density, so a little bit compressed. And then that gives you more real estate on your screen. And there's an overflow that we didn't have before. In the header, you can have a whole bunch of other columns that are available, and you click the little caret. I'll show you on the next slide. It's a little bit bigger. So you can have more than just 4 columns in the header layout. One thing I have personally really enjoyed is when I've got a bunch of description columns or something like that, they're big text areas, but sometimes they're small, then I want it to be auto-expanding, right? I always like that. Take up as little space as it needs to and expand as needed. We could only do one of those per tab per form in the past, but now we can do more. I've never seen documentation saying you can do this, but you can, and I love this. Also, there's a form access checker, which will actually tell you, hey, this person can't access this form because of this security role, that kind of thing. So it's a good validation tool. And so this is what that interface looks like. Up at the top, you've got this kind of header bar, and you've got some form settings where you can configure security roles and things like that. In the main part, you've got the what you see is what you get preview. On the left, the column chooser with full searching and filtering abilities. On the right, a little pop-out side pane for the properties of whatever you have selected. Then you've got the preview size switcher down at the bottom, an option to actually show or hide. Natively, this interface hides all of the hidden columns and controls. So you can see, like I said, what you see is what you get. It will, by default, actually hide something when you say to make it hidden. And then you can zoom in, zoom out, and make it full screen. All right, customizing views. So that was a form. Now this is view. And again, what you see is what you get. It has real data in here too, which is really cool. It drag and drop to reorder. So you can see in my GIF, I drag and drop to change the order of them. So much better than having to click the little column in that old interface and click left, 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 left. You can actually just drag it right where you want it. You can also click and drag to resize, which is so cool. Instead of having to go to the settings and click, do you want 50 pixels or 100 pixels, 150 pixels? You can make it very precise. You can even auto size a column like you do in Excel to the data that's in that column. You can easy sorting kind of like Excel. And here's just that example blown up a little bit. Going to add the city column, drag it right where I want it. I'm going to double click it to auto size to the data. Double click those other ones to auto size them to the data. And then can change the sort to make it Z to A or A to Z. It's just easy interface. All right, customizing apps. This is the new portal, the new, what is it called? Model-driven app designer in preview still. This is an interactive preview. As you build your app, your model-driven app, you can actually interact with it in the native forms. You can have some controls. Maybe you don't like seeing the home or that recent or the pinned, those things up at the top left. You can hide those here now. We couldn't hide those before. You can also do collapsible sitemap groups. So you got maybe sales, and you've got 5 different sub areas in there, different tables with views in there. You can make that collapsible. So if you have a huge sitemap, you can just have them all collapsible, and they take up little space. Kind of a traditional menu navigation option that we haven't had before. A lot of limitations still. Just I wanted to put this in there. It's not quite there yet. You also have the opportunity for custom pages, which I will talk about in a little bit as well. And this is where you get to that command designer with the new PowerFX command bars. You have to go through this designer. So again, very similar to the form designer. You've got things on the left. These are actually the pages that you have in your app. Traditionally, these are just the entities, the tables that we have in there. But you can also have custom pages, which are different, which are essentially Power Apps. You can select which forms you want in the app, a totally different experience than what we had before, and you actually see it and can interact with the app as you build it. All right, what's new? Wanted to just highlight in here. Hopefully you already know this because Malcolm told everyone to study up on the release notes. We're going to talk about those, but the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform release plans are ones you want to look at, because if you're in just Dynamics release plans, you'll miss a lot of important updates, because a lot of the updates are coming from the model-driven Power App perspective. They're applicable to people with a Dynamics license and also people with a Power App license building model-driven Power Apps. So be sure you check out both. The Power Apps blog is another great resource. The Power Automate blog, of course, the Dynamics blog as well. And some of my favorite features in preview that will soon be coming generally available, PowerFX columns, the calculated columns like that, the modern app designer, and the custom pages where you can create Canvas apps as pages in your model-driven app, and also the PowerFX command designer. And so some of the stuff is in the release notes. So maybe some people are excited for these things too and want to share those next. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for the time. This was my second time giving this. So the first time was live. So y'all are a lucky bunch. So hopefully this is helpful and you got some ideas perhaps on how you can use Power Platform for dynamic stuff. Because we always want to be using the newest tools and everything, right? So thanks for the applause there. Malcolm, any questions in the chat there?
I'm frantically trying to get back to the right screen. So no, I don't see any. I had to close the chat down for a minute. I don't see any. Oh, I do see one. Roger had one on the forum. Is it possible to set the label width? It seems to have a fixed width. A large label does not fully show unless you click on it, and then it expand it vertically. You might want to look at the thread. I probably didn't read that very well.
The label width. So the label of a field, like the field label? Is that?
That's how I would read that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because the thing that I've found to do if you have really big field labels is to configure the section on your form. So the label, the field itself is below the label instead of to the side, because when it's to the side, it's always very truncated. But if you configure it so the data is beneath the label, then the label will take up as much width as the section has. And so with that, you can kind of control the width of it.
Nice. Field label. Yeah, that's what he was referring to, the field label, he says. So, and then there's a comment too from Mark about, he said, so there's a cost for each model-driven app end user. That could be significant.
There is, so not a licensing expert disclaimer, but I have spent a lot of time in the licensing guides. The model-driven app, so if you have, there are 3 ways to license a Power App with a Power App license. You can buy a per app license, and that gives you 1 model-driven app, and that's $5 a month. You can license per user, which is $20 a month, and that gives as many apps as they want, no matter where they are, what they do. Or you can pay as you go, and you can license the app for a pay as you go model. And so if you create your own custom sales model-driven app for your salespeople, then you can use a pay as you go model if you wanted. If only a smaller percentage of the people on a regular basis use your app, but everybody needs access. Or you can buy a Dynamics license for a lot more money, which is probably what most of us are doing, because hopefully we're leveraging the Dynamics functionalities as well. I didn't cover any of that stuff. A Dynamics license gives you access to a lot more things. So if you have a Dynamics license, then you have access to everything else as well, so you're good.
And that could include multiple apps. There could be, for whatever reason, they might have 2 or 3 that they could bounce between and use, and they'd have access to all if they had a full enterprise license.
That's right.
And I neither am a licensing expert. I'm not sure that one exists, but if we find them, we'll get them on the show, so to speak.
Even at Microsoft, it's hard to find a licensing expert, I think.
Agreed. All right, I don't see any other questions. I know that a lot of people had to drop at the 3 o'clock or the top of the hour, we'll say, because other meetings and conflicts and things. But there's still a handful of people here, and feel free to stay tuned because to Chad's point, we're going to flip over to our more interactive portion. But I wanted to, first of all, thank you, Chad, so much for taking time out of your day, and especially new on the job. I know, congratulations on starting your new gig, and thank you for taking time out of week 2 to join us here and spend the afternoon or some of it with us. Really appreciate your time. Great presentation, good feedback in the chat, which is awesome. So looking forward to it. And I know, are you presenting at the next DynamicsCon, or?
And I'll be talking about customer voice at this coming DynamicsCon.
Excellent. So there you go, folks. If you're not signed up, give that a go. I've attended a few of those over time. They're great sessions. You got to block your calendar and tell everybody else that you're not available, because you got to stay focused. It's a little hard to do sometimes, but go see Chad speak at the upcoming DynamicsCon. I think that's is it next week or 2 weeks? It's early.
No, it's in March. It's the 3 weeks, I think. 3 weeks from now.
All right, so coming up pretty quick.
And then if you want to come down to Texas, go check out the DynamicsCon Live. The agenda's up there now. So Tim, Tony, it'd be fun to see people in Texas. It's warmer.
Yeah, somebody just asked for the link, so I'm just going to pull that up and throw it in here. Yeah, March 15th to the 17th is when it's coming up. I'll throw that in the chat. You can go ahead and register. And there you are. So I'm going to take presentation back here. I'm going to share our screen. Hang tight for a moment. So the next thing on here, so Chad, I think you did earlier, but I know people were kind of been in and out. So if you want to throw your LinkedIn details back in the chat, that'd be great, just so people have a chance to connect with you and maybe ask some other questions if they wish. Now we're going to move into an interactive chat. Now this is going to be a little bit painful because I didn't enable everyone. I thought I did, for the record, when I set it up. I thought I told it to allow everybody to have control over your stuff, but you don't. So I'm going to go ahead and just fly down the list. And if you can kind of compose your thoughts for a minute, what I encouraged everybody to do, and how many people came prepared for this, I don't know. But what I encouraged people to do was to come prepared with having read the release notes, and Chad called it out. And actually, as he did, I scrambled and put the Power Platform one, because I realized I only had the Dynamics 365 one put up here. And so good call out, Chad, that there's 2. If you're only looking at one, you're going to be missing out on some content. Here, I've got both of them for 2022 here. They're both live links. When you get the presentation, you'll be able to click the link on either one and open them up and peruse through, but hopefully you've already done that, because I encourage you to do so. And so we can have some dialogue about it. I'm going to just rifle through the list and allow camera for everybody. And that should give you the ability, or sorry, allow mic. I'll do both camera and mic, but it'll allow you to come off mute yourself. And what I'd love for people to do is just share what you're most excited about. And I know that these calls can be a little bit painful in the regard in getting people to share, because sometimes it's weird. You don't want to talk over each other or whatever. But let's remember, we're all friends here. It's all good. Nobody's intentionally interrupting each other. I'll start by just saying, when I looked through on now, my core projects right now are primarily Dynamics focused. So that was where I gravitated to first. And the 2 things that caught my eye in particular was within the marketing app, some of the new features that they're building in the ability to dynamically control communication. So not only putting dynamic text, which we've been able to do for a long time, but you can actually put sections now. And if people belong to a certain group that you have created in Dynamics, then when you send out the communication, if they're part of like the VIP group, they'll see that section. If they're not, they won't see that section in the email. That to me is game changing. That's amazing. When it comes to creating content, you no longer have to create multiple messages by group. You'll be able to create one and configure it in a way that allows it to dynamically pull the right version of the message and send it out. So that to me is amazing. The other thing on the sales side of stuff is I've been dabbling a little bit with the forecasting tools. Been pretty pleased with those, but they're baking in a ton of new features. The ability to look at a forecast and toggle the underlying opportunities that are related to the forecast, and just giving more power to the users, I think, is a huge step forward, because you want to be able to use those forecasts to be, as a manager, I want to see where we're going and how things are going and look at what's related to the forecast. As an end user or as a salesperson, perhaps, I want to be able to look at the forecast and see what's my stake in that. How am I carrying my weight? What do I need to do? What things should I be working on to make sure that we achieve those forecasted figures? So those two things jumped out at me. Again, I'm going to go down the list. I'm going to work through as best I can here and unmute, give everybody the ability to allow mic. You can come off, or you can just throw it in the chat. And so I'm working my way down the list. And I apologize for this because it's kind of painful. There's a lot of us. I'm down to the I's. I'm into Jennifer, and Jeremy, allow.
I'm helping you, Malcolm, from the bottom.
Pardon?
I'm helping you from the bottom of the list.
Oh, you can too. Oh, that's amazing. Cool. So go ahead and do that. Thank you. I know a couple people chimed in. Thank you for trying to help, saying you should be able to change it from the meeting settings. But because I joined this in the web version of Teams, it doesn't seem to have the same capabilities. I know the area you're talking about, and I was looking for it. I was like, oh, you're right. It should be there, but I couldn't find them. So I don't know what happened. So I think everybody's able to come off mute. You should be able to unmute your line. We'd love to hear from you. What if you've read through either one of these guides, what are you most excited to see? You could all just awkwardly stare at me, but anybody has any?
I guess I'll jump in first. Richard, hey, how's it going?
Hey,
deeper Teams integration to increase user adoption is going to be critical over the next few months.
Yeah, that's a good one. Have you played around at all with the chat integration and allowing it to, you can now integrate chat and have a chat regardless of if the person has a D365 license. Now, that's super slick. I just showed a customer that a couple weeks ago and they were like, what?
Not done that yet, but I've basically incorporated it into CE. So a sales team members can actually participate and converse about a specific account. And all of that chat is actually sort of, put under the account in one place. From a Teams perspective. So you can just open up the account and look at the stream of all the chat about that, which is pretty cool.
That is very cool. Yeah, that's super cool. And it should, if it behaves as the way that the other chat does too, it actually puts it in your, if you're involved in one of those chats, it'll put it in your chat in Teams. So you don't even have to be in Dynamics to see that. You could be closed down for the day and then, maybe en route to a meeting and get a ping from the chat and be able to engage in that chat, even though you're not looking at the system.
Exactly.
I think is amazing.
And then building on top of that, obviously the voice integration with the transcription and all those things with sentiment analysis, all those things are coming down the line, and they're going to be big game changers in adoption too.
Hey, we hear a lot of people be like, "Oh, I think I like that, but it seems very Big Brother watching so to speak." But it's pretty amazing. I've seen a couple demos of it where it, picks up the good in the chat and the bad, and even some of the I'm only continuing to talk because I don't see any other hands up, but feel free to cut me off, folks. The other thing I've seen people demo is on our end, even on one of my teammates demoed it where they did it and it captured some to-dos and made recommendations saying, hey, in the phone call, you said this, would you like to create a task for that? And that,
for salespeople, it's great.
Oh, it's mind-boggling that they can do that, but it's awesome.
I'll shut up now. Let other people have a turn.
No, keep them coming. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll throw out one here. I'm gonna have to jump soon. So the undo option in Power Automate. Anybody that's worked in Power Automate, if you make a change, the change is done forever. You can't undo it unless you cancel out without saving your changes and hope you didn't have anything else unsaved. But now they're bringing an undo button, and I'm very excited.
That's awesome. That's a good one. Kenneth, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
And what I'll just say is from the development point of view is being able to do everything in the Maker tool now and not have to go back to the Classic to do certain pieces because it's frustrating. You start to, oh yeah, I got to flip, and then flipping back and forth, it just gets painful. So
agreed.
It'd be nice to see when that's all out.
I agree. Yeah, it's nice to see things slowly moving. I even saw I think it's been up for a month or so now, but there's a tag in there that says all the security functionality is being deprecated from the legacy version, and you can only manage it in the new one now. So it's still available today, but it's going to go away, which I think is a good thing. But to Chad's point earlier, if you're stuck in your ways and you like to use the Classic, would heed his advice to move into the new Maker app and get familiar with it, because the day will come not too long from now that'll be your only option. So
talking about security, are they ever going to freeze that top row in the security configuration panel so you can see I know we're all used to it, but that is so frustrating.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a good call. I don't know if there's they do the community ideas forum still, and that you can, if that's not on there, that should be voted, because
it seems like just such a simple thing that's been there forever.
Yeah. Just pulling up the chat, see if anybody chimed in here. I know some people prefer not to talk. My family wish I did that, but
I just put in the Lisa Crosby top 10 wave features in 10 minutes. So if people want to just view that, they can do.
Excellent. Thank you for posting that. That's great. That's a great one. She does a great job. Deeper Teams integration. Cool. All right. So unless somebody has another idea, feel free to interrupt me, but I don't want to stand here in awkward silence. So thank you all for joining. I do want to bring your attention to two quick things. I'm going to send this link out when I send the email tomorrow with the recording and the link to the PowerPoint deck that we used today. I forgot about recording, frankly, because I was doing too many things at once. And so I didn't start it until just before Chad started, which means you're going to miss the first little bit that all my little blabbing on and on about welcome and all that stuff. So not a whole lot missed there, but we're going to capture the rest of it, so you'll have access to that. You'll also see a link to this. We would love your input. So this survey is just a very quick, I mentioned it earlier, it's very quick and short. Couple options. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to present a topic, please do. If you think you might, but you're not sure, use the convince me and give me your email. I'd be happy to connect with you and support you through that. I know some people have never presented before and you're like, I don't think I should do it. 100% you should do it. And I'm happy to support you. I'd be happy to even co-present with you, as I'm sure other people on the call would. So if you kind of think you have content that you'd like to present, but you're not feeling 100% comfortable, say convince me. You see it here in the middle. We'd be happy to chat. Fill this in. This is going to ask you for information about like what kind of tools are interested in you, what kind of information are you looking for from these sessions. This is for you, right? So we can think of topics, but frankly, we're throwing a dart at a dartboard when we do. We'd much rather have input from all of you to say, hey, I'd really like to learn about this. And frankly, we don't have a whole lot of suggestions coming in. So if you make one, chances are I'm going to jump on it, because we're always looking for good content and good topics to throw out there. So if you take a minute, click the link to this. I'll actually throw it in the chat right now. So if you want to do that before you leave today, that'd be great too. If I can find the session, it's right here. So if you want to pop into that, please feel free, submit any and all ideas. That would be great. And again, thank you all for coming. That's all we have. You'll get this PowerPoint deck. It has the link that I just talked about, so we'd love to hear your ideas. But thank you all for joining today. Great job, Chad. Thanks for joining. If you haven't dropped yet, thanks for taking your time again. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Thank you. You too. See, a few people are still in. You may not realize you're still in the meeting. If you hung around to chat and you're trying, we can't hear you because you're muted. Otherwise, I'm going to shut down the meeting.